As you know, I like YTTD. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and I made a video talking about how much I enjoy it. But that video mostly went over the story and how it toys with players' feeling. I didn't really go over any of the characters, which are equally as wonderful. For a game with such a large cast, it's surprising to me that none of them are unlikable, unless it was done on purpose, of course. Even the worst characters are still pretty solid overall, and the ones that are considered the best truly are something else. I have a handful of favorite characters from this game, but the one I'm talking about today is one that I genuinely didn't expect to like as much as I did, Sou Hiyori. The teal-colored, lying hobo who can't do a push-up and gets compared to Kokichi Oma and Nagito Maeda way too much. At first, it seemed like this dude is just the typical edgy rival of the group, the one that deliberately messes things up for no apparent reason other than to make the game more difficult. But he is far from that. Not only is Sou a really good character, but I'd go as far as to say that he is a near perfect foil to Sarah and the game as a whole. I think I should start off with why Sou is so great by stating why I think others like him fail, and yes, that does mean I have to compare him to Nagito and Kokichi, as if he doesn't get compared to them enough. I think the reason why I'm not that big of a fan of these edgy rivals in games like this is because, while they are framed in a way as if they are morally complex, how they actually are in the game says the opposite. Take Nagito and Kokichi for instance. Byakuya applies as well, but thankfully no one really sees him as morally grey, so I won't talk about him. Sure, Nagito does all the things he does with mostly good intentions, but his intentions still come from a twisted worldview that believes only a select, naturally talented few deserve to live, and if you aren't born talented, you don't matter. Because of this, even though he technically comes from a place of goodwill, you can't really say he's doing the right thing, as his very beliefs are questionable at best. As for Kokichi, while his true motives are kind of left in the dust, he did manipulate others and even kill some of them, which should pretty much speak for itself. Plus, the only time his motives are really questioned is after his death, and after everything has been said and done. No one really questions or sympathizes with Kokichi in his living moments, and for good reason. I do think there is a misconception when it comes to the idea of grey morality, and that is just a third option of morality, when in reality, moral greyness is a spectrum with many hues. However, even so, while these characters are technically morally grey, they are black enough on the scale for you to think, yeah, these guys are definitely villains. However, what I find interesting about Sou is that, in terms of grey morality, he is almost a 50-50 split. With the vast majority of YTTD, you genuinely cannot tell whether this guy is good or not. I've never seen a character like this before, so how's YTTD able to pull it off? It all has to do with excellent timing and clever hints. Right off the bat, you're introduced to someone who heavily resembles Sou Hiyori, and he seems pretty evil, so when you meet the actual Sou and he doesn't act like that at all, you start to get suspicious. See, while Sou isn't a twist villain, he is built similarly to one. And with twist villains, there are two phases to them. The first is the initial shock of discovering a twist villain in your first viewing, and the second is the anticipation for the reveal to happen with every viewing after. However, this scene actively removes the first phase out of the equation, leaving us with a very interesting predicament. We all know that Sou's nice demeanor is most likely a facade and he's going to rip off his mask later. We don't know exactly when, so all we have to do now is wait, and wait, and wait. And even after all this time, he still hasn't taken off his mask of his. And it makes you wonder if he even had a mask at all. And so, you start to question yourself. And once you finally do, BAM! At the very start of the trial, Sou announces that he is the Keymaster, which you know is a flat-out lie because you are! The weirdest part about this is that it came out of nowhere. It wasn't provoked or anything, he just announced it. In fact, if you weren't the Keymaster, you wouldn't have even noticed something was off. Compare this to Maeda, where he only drops his facade after Hajime proved he was the one who caused the blackout in Case 1. Another really weird aspect about this is that he still hasn't done a face heel turn once he said this, leaving you even more confused and on edge than before. All those suspicious thoughts and questions have intensely amplified as Sou continues to maintain his peaceful facade, if it's even a facade at all. At this point, no one even knows, and just as before, his facade lasts a good while, and the more time it is prolonged, the more confused you are. Sou continues to sprinkle slightly suspicious stuff throughout the main game until everyone comes together in support of Sarah and say that Sou is a lying piece of garbage that needs to shut up. Only then does his mask fall off, or did he just put on yet another facade? Notice how we only started to get angry when everyone was defending Sarah? I'll talk about that later, but make sure to keep that in mind. Also in the same game, Kana lies about Sou being the Keymaster, implying that Sou manipulated Kana in some way. In Chapter 2, it appears that Sou has forgotten all the things he's done in the trial, and he's returned back to his old self. Oh no, I'm not gonna fall for this one again. I know what you're up to. You're gonna go all innocent, and once I catch on to you, you're gonna drop that facade of yours. But just like last time, Sou manages to keep it up for so long that, despite everything, you still don't know what his true intentions are, and that's why you love him so much. And this doesn't just apply to scenes like this. Even when his mask is supposedly off, there's a lot of nuance to his actions in a way that can lead to multiple interpretations. Let's take his relationship with Kana. A lot of the Death Game participants view their planned actions together as Sou manipulating Kana, and it does make sense where they're getting that from. Sou constantly flips back and forth from insulting Kana to acting like he's a friend, which is something abusers and manipulators do to their victims a lot. Kana also has this attitude where people just don't see the Sou that she sees, which is a common attitude victims have to their abusers and manipulators. Because they have a small shred of kindness to them, then what they are doing suddenly isn't so bad. Kana also is the perfect target for manipulation. She's young, impressionable, has low self-esteem, and is at her lowest point in life, having her sister die in front of her eyes. However, there still is a chance that Sou isn't manipulating Kana, and in fact, she is willing to go along with his plans by choice. One of the biggest examples is that abusers and manipulators often make their victims become distrustful of any outside influence, especially when said influence goes against the manipulator's values. However, Kana isn't like that at all. In fact, Kana is incredibly fond of Sarah, almost as much as she is with Sou, if not even more. Now, would a manipulator really allow his victim to get buddy-buddy with his worst enemy? If Kana was truly manipulated, something like this could cause the risk of her snapping out of it and realizing that her friendship with Sou is unhealthy, making her leave for good. However, despite this, she stays. Also, in the room where Kana lived, she admits that she knew that Kuye sent those mean messages on the phone this whole time, meaning she's a lot more competent than most people think, Sou included. There's also the fact that Kana is pretty open about the fact that she feels bad for betraying Sarah occasionally. It is highly unlikely for a victim such as this to not only talk negatively about their manipulator in front of others, but to be so open and confident about it as well. That being said, none of these things confirm Kana is not manipulated, but it does show that her being manipulated isn't the only possibility. The same thing could apply to Sou's needlessly abhorrent behavior towards Kai's death. Sure, it was, well, needlessly abhorrent, but consider the fact that Kai was believed to be in on the death game. There is a common attitude among some people that there was nothing wrong with being cruel to those who are morally reprehensible, or so they think, and Sou is one of those people. What looks like needless cruelty now felt like sweet schadenfreude to Sou. Now, as for the endless amounts of attacks towards Sarah, there is one scene that may answer those actions, and it also changes the opinions on Sou from a really good character to an absolutely genius one, and that is the opening scene in Chapter 2, Part 2. We figure out that the Sou from the beginning of the game is actually Sou's inner demons as he tries to cope with the fact that he has a 0% chance of survival, and in that scene, we get to see a lot of Sou's inner psyche, including a dream showing his fear of Sarah, that reminded me of something. So, one of my most popular videos is my Twist Villain video, and I'm talking about my many experiences with them. In fact, one of my favorite things to do when consuming mystery media is to guess who the twist villain is. When this happens, I happen to get a little overconfident and unnecessarily cruel towards my little suspect, and then I realize, oh my word! And you should have died! The roles are flipped! Sou is supposed to be the mystery-solving protagonist, while Sarah is supposed to be the twist villain hiding her innocent facade. Just think about it. Sarah suspiciously has a 100% chance of survival is awfully similar to someone from the Hades experience. Just so happens to get the Keymaster for the first in the game. Her father is pretty suspicious, and Keiji, the second most suspicious character in the game, seems to defend each and every one of her actions. If you weren't playing as her, you'd be suspicious of her too. In that sense, Sou kind of acts like the player or protagonist when they think they found out the twist villain. But what about Sou's frequent lying and manipulation? Surely a typical protagonist wouldn't do something like that. Well, you'd be surprised. A lot of popular mystery protagonists actually lie to reveal the truth. I would use Ace Attorney and Zero Escape as an example, but I don't want to spoil them for you guys. So I'll use Danganronpa again. In Trigger Happy Havoc, Makoto had to lie in order to make Kyoko's plan work, and for V3, the theme was literally about how you can use lies to solve the truth. So yeah, protagonists often do lie in order to solve the mystery, and that applies to Sou too. Think about how Sou lied about being the Keymaster. He did that in order to find out who the real Keymaster is. Sou is the perfect foil because he takes our natural feelings of doubt and suspicion and turns them against you. So, do I think Sou is a good guy? Of course not! Sou is not a good guy, nor is he a bad guy. Sou Hiyori is a jerk. But he's an interesting jerk. One who makes us think about how we all are the hero in our own little stories.